What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius, and boy, do we have a special guest. Nathanael Chawkin is in the house. What's up, Nathanael?
Wonderful to be with you, my friend, as always.
Oh man. So, man, what are you, like third time?
This is number 3. Yeah.
All right. Well, the show's 5 years old. So we usually link up every 18 months or so on the show.
Exactly right.
That feels about right. 5 years old next month.
Amazing. Congratulations. Big growth.
Yeah, thank you. Feels weird. Like it doesn't feel like it's been 5 years. This has been like a project. Like normally I have these projects where I'm like, X has to happen by Y date or else it's a failure. And there's these KPIs and 5-year plan and all this. And for the show, I kind of did that initially. And then I realized I didn't know how to grow the show. So yeah. I was like, this isn't really like making sense how I'm the investment for the growth. I'm like, I actually just like doing the show, which is kind of rare for me to just do something for the sake of doing it because I like it. Normally that sounds like a hobby. And as an entrepreneur, I didn't really have any. And now I'm like, it's a thing that I just love to do. So let's do it.
Well, that's the thing about it growing us and it showing us where it wants to take us sometimes. And everyone has a plan till we get punched in the mouth. And then we learn to grow and adapt and see what it really is. And ain't that the entrepreneur's journey?
I know, man. It's incredible. So for the listeners who are not familiar with Nathanael, number one is we're going to put in the show notes previous episodes because the fact that we have 52 minutes is kind of laughable with me and Nathanael. We can go like 3 hours. But we'll put our past episodes. I think at least one of them was a live stream, so I don't know if that made it into a show. But for sure, the last episode was a show we did.
There's 2 of them out there in the social media.
Right. Yeah, so we'll get both of those in the show notes. I highly recommend you to go down the rabbit hole and listen to the previous shows. So we're not going to go too deep on Nathanael's background or his like we normally would in a show, just because that's been done in the previous shows. But I'll give my background with Nathanael. I met him at Essalon 2019, 6 years ago, at a Future of Masculinity conference. That he and another gentleman led, that I was there with my forum. I was going through hell then. I was in the middle of basically I was about 7 or 8 weeks out from leaving my previous company, TMS, like resigning as CEO and then orchestrating an exit that took place the next year. But I was in a really weird place. And then man, we've ended up hanging out a bunch of times with my forum and at GOT and then on the show and in person. So you become a friend and a mentor and someone that I look up to from a coaching perspective, as well as the way you do life. And we drop in on a lot of different areas. So Nathanael is really just I'll go into your formal bio in a second and you can touch on it too. But man, welcome back to the show. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much. Really honored that you would say that, and love our conversation. So looking forward to this one.
Definitely, my friend. So by the way, we were supposed to do this show a couple months ago, and you just had a baby girl. Is that correct?
Yes, baby girl, our first. My wife Elizabeth and I, and we were just talking about this before the show. It's really hard to envision what that's going to be like when you have an innocent little baby. And the birth was challenging. Mom was 9 days in the hospital and into the ICU, and baby into the NICU. But the unconditional love that pours out and the kind of zoom out that happens when you realize, the baby was given birth, and I went over with her, and my mother was there too. And I looked at her with tears in my eyes, like, wow, you did this for me too. And I'd never thought to have that perspective before. But it's like that. We feel how we're loved by our parents as well. And when we're loving this little creature, this little being that emerges.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like, I have 2 kids, and my oldest is 15. My youngest is 11. He went to like sleepaway camp for his like graduation today, which is crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's like, and we were talking about this before the show, where I'll meet people and they're like, "Oh, I don't really want kids. I'm too selfish." And I'm like, well, let me just put this into perspective. You're saying you don't want to have something based off of data set that you understand, testing it against a data set that you have no idea about.
Yeah.
And so, like, just want to point this out to you. Like, I believe it's the biggest mistake in a life is to not have a child.
And
Because
the data set that doesn't include direct experience.
yeah. And they're like, oh, I don't like other people's kids. I'm like, yeah, neither did I. Like,
and what's wrong with growing up out of being a little more selfish anyway? It's the giving is the receiving when you're with a child.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that what I always tell people, it's really simple. I go, having a child, at least for me, and I've asked this of many people who have children, and everyone agrees. I said it's the first time in your life you'll love someone more than yourself. And they're like, no, that's not true. I love my dog or my girlfriend. I'm like, no, that's not true. Or my wife or whatever. And I'm going to prove to you. Nathaniel, you want me to prove to you that you'll love a child more than yourself?
Yeah.
And it's more than you'll love anyone else.
Yeah. Right. There is that divine child kind of thing, the adoration. Like a baby is so cute, so precious. And the love it calls out of you is just really special. Yeah, especially for fathers, fathers and their daughters, which I didn't expect as well.
Yeah, I only have boys, so I can't relate in that way, but I can relate in the fact that, like, dude, when you just have a kid, it's like the first time in your life you love something more than yourself. So I started saying this probably when my kids were really young. This is 2011. So my oldest was 2 and my youngest wasn't even born yet. Yeah. And I was in a cab. I was talking to my brother and his ex-wife, now ex-wife, and we were in a cab in Miami. And I was saying this, and I said, I'll prove it to you guys. And so, and this is a funny story. And I said, so let's say I pulled out a gun and I said, it's you or your wife. At a minimum, you'd probably have to think about it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But if I pulled out a gun and said, you or your kid, you wouldn't even finish the sentence.
Yeah. It's the prime directive. And pass it along. So there's some hope of evolution through genetic inheritance.
Yeah. You'd at least have to think about it. When someone says they love their dog more than themselves, I'm like, dude, if I busted out a gun and said you and your dog, I'd be like, sorry, Snoopy. We've had a good run, And so what's funny is we're in this cab in Miami, and I said that, and the cab driver looks up in the rearview mirror, and goes, shaked his head. He's like, oh yeah. What that guy said.
Well, it's interesting we're talking about this because, and I'll let you take the lead here, but just in the way that we met around evolving masculinity, that retreat at Esalen, it was your forum. The convergence of those things, the band of brothers that you have there, fellow travelers who you've been with for years and years, over a decade, I think. And then almost the concept of almost 19 years. This concept of what is healthy masculinity? What is the father archetype? Like, where are men today? And that's the notion of the guardian is really central to my work now.
That's awesome, man. Oh, I'm excited for us to dig into that. I know we jumped into the kid bandwagon, but I just wanted to congratulate you on fatherhood. Thank you. It's such a blessing, man.
It really is.
Kids are like, and for people that are like, oh, I don't have enough money to have a kid. I'm like, listen, I'll tell you the biggest. You want to make more money? Go have a kid. It'll motivate you to make more money. Especially if you're a professional. If you're like a person that's not a professional, like look, you got to like take care of survival first and then have a kid. But if you're a person that's a successful person and that's the reason why you're not having a kid, I'm gonna tell you right now, you will figure out a way. You want something done, give it to a busy person, they'll figure out how to do it. Right? Like yes, it comes at a cost, but it's the greatest exchange of time that you'll ever give is to that of another person who you're gonna raise to be an amazing human.
So it is the built-in purpose, like the infrastructure is there. It's built into us. That's our reason for being.
Yeah.
So the purpose is direct. That's actually well said, because that is what it gives you, is that motivation.
Yep. My dad used to say, because my dad was an entrepreneur, he'd say like, oh, like kids are good luck for making money. And I'm like, I think to your point, you just get hyper focused on like providing and stepping up, and it just gives you more of a calling. It motivated me, that's for sure. I'm gonna do your formal bio, and then I'd love maybe just give like a quick 2-minute overview, and then I'd love to kind of dig into some of the stuff we're talking about. I know you're doing a lot of work with leaders and doing some interesting work in the world of plant medicine, and would love to kind of dig into that. By the way, I did an ayahuasca journey since we last spoke. I don't know if
maybe we'll have to get some cliff notes about that too.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
So, you guys, Nathanael's the founder of Palestra. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Palestra, yeah.
Palestra leadership and specialist in deliberately developing development organizations, deliberately developmental organizations, trusted executive coach. He coaches some amazing people, and spiritual guide for over 15 years, with over 15 years of experience. Featured in Entrepreneur Magazine. He was a speaker at my event at MIT. He worked with some amazing folks. And like, you're a martial artist, just like a real Renaissance man. But would love if you wouldn't mind just kind of give the audience just kind of your background, because you have a really interesting background on how you got into this world. I'd love if you can give some of that background, and then I'd love to kind of dig into what you're seeing out there as far as developmentally, what you're seeing in organizations, leadership, really the consciousness we're seeing in the world right now.
Yeah, of course, happy to do it. Just a quick segue story would be to say that one of my mentor coaches, who ultimately connected me with Stegan, where I worked as an executive coach for 6 years, he referred a YPOer to me for the Awakening Leadership Program. So I was on an exploratory call with him, and he kind of paused and was like, "I've known you since 2010. It seems like you've had a bit of a pivot here. Like, you're doing this work now." I said, "Yeah, it's been more than a pivot." So spent years doing leadership team and organizational development inside of organizations as I moved out onto my own here to Santa Barbara from Texas. Had to restore balance to the force. 6 years in each state. And my first experience with plant medicine with psilocybin actually was that same year, 2015, 10 years ago now, when I was leaving my job, winding down. And that was always a splinter in the back of my mind. I knew that had to come to the fore. And as the psychedelic renaissance was kicking off, we started just with a dialogue series during COVID. And then Awakening Leadership as a program, the ALP, was my offering. And this is a 3-month journey experience for leaders who are seeking to self-actualize through genuine mystical experience. And a lot of the scientific research on plant medicine was coming out that same year as well. The kind of New Yorker article that was summarizing all the scientific research at Johns Hopkins and NYU that Michael Pollan had authored was coming out. That later became his book, How to Change Your Mind. And so there was this whole kind of uprising around, what are these experiences, and why do people say, 75% of people say it's one of the 5 most spiritual or meaningful experiences of their lives, and why do the remaining 25% say it's the single defining mystical experience of their life? So I had to know what that was all about. So I went first person into that. So as a result, Awakening Leadership Program became our focus. And that's just a gateway into other work that we do. There's this notion you hear in psychedelics about integration. And for me, you can analogize it to, you take 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C, how much of it are you going to really absorb? But when you apply that back to an expanded state of consciousness or a mystical experience, then you have to ask yourself, how do I integrate that? What does it even mean to integrate that? And so for us, integration very much is a practice, especially because these plant medicines are being used to heal things. You hear cliches like 5 years of therapy in 5 hours, but you have to be really careful with statements like that, because you can see things that 5 years of psychotherapy wouldn't help you to see. But it's like it gives you the homework, but it doesn't do the homework for you.
Right.
So the Awakening Leadership Program is very much like 2 months of prep, going into a deep dive curriculum that helps you get to know your own ego and how you get in your own way. And then another month of like how to translate that experience back into actually showing up differently as a leader. So we like to say, as a leader, integration continues beyond you. So it's an accelerator, but it's not an end all be all. So we're trying to just get people onto the long-term path of leadership development and ultimately the spiritual path too.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. My wife is now just getting kind of turned on to kind of the spiritual side of her life, and she was talking about, I can't remember who it was, but she was watching a talk this morning, and we were talking about the talk she watched, which is essentially talking about like they're doing like MRIs on brains of folks that have been on a spiritual path doing spiritual work, and the actual like brain develops differently if you are have an attachment and a work being done spiritually to connect with source or to connect with a higher, you know, being, depending on how you what you believe in. And I've been on this pathway probably for about 7 years is when it started, like where it really was the first time I did a plant medicine journey. And it's gone pretty deep. I know that I think that I've had pretty profound experiences with this. And interestingly enough, like for me, it was in a reaction. It was actually done just for like out of curiosity. And it wasn't something where I was like, oh, I want to. I wasn't. I was a person that actually had. I have a deep reverence for like all the plant medicine. I'm scared of them, which is my way of saying I'm fucking afraid, deeply afraid of them.
Yeah, as you ought to be. The Hebrew word for fear, like fear of God, when we say that, there's two words. One of them means fear, but the one that's used is actually for awe. Yirah, it translates as awe, like reverence and respect. And I think that's an intelligent kind of fear to have.
Yeah. And I hear people like behave in a way where there's like, I just said screw it and went for it. I'm like, not me.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, whatever you gave that person, give me a third. And
be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive and careful, and I think I'm very open. So I get really like, it's very intense for me. So
what would you share, if anything, not to put you on the spot, but anything about your experience?
So, you know, I've had different experiences. A lot of the what's interesting enough is like a lot of the experiences that I've had that are I think like that I could compare, that anyone who's listening to this that has not had these experiences. So my early experiences were like in college, where my friends and I were like experimenting with mushrooms, right? And I had like fun experiences where it was just like, you know, you kind of, things look kind of weird, and you're getting these like light hallucinations, and like, you know, you have a kind of a body high, and, you know, kind of just feel tingly. And my first mushroom experience was my freshman year of college, and that's what it was. And then my second one was literally like I ate a third of a cap of like this stuff, these mushrooms from Amsterdam, that literally I lost my fucking mind. And it was like a very small amount, and it happened in 5 minutes after I ate them. And so whatever I tapped into some like insane portal, and I scared the living shit out of two of my high school friends. Like they're like imagine if you're like with someone, they eat, and they usually, for most people that don't know about psilocybin, maybe it takes 30, 40, 50, depending on how much you eat and your reaction, maybe it's 45 minutes to an hour before you start really feeling it.
Right.
You know, does that sound about right to you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes. I was 19. I was going through a really hard time in my life, like set and setting. The setting was good. My set was not good. I kind of had gone into a bit of a depression at that point. And so it was just the wrong thing at the wrong time. And within 3 to 5 minutes, I saw lightning bolts shooting sideways across the sky. We were walking around a reservoir, and I saw alien faces forming, like literally devil faces, saying, "Go kill yourself." Like,
wow, that's not so good.
Fucking intense, and it was gnarly. And I was like, oh, never. And it lasted 3 hours. And by the end, I couldn't even open a car door. I was so out of my mind, and I thought I was going to be like that permanently. So like, like not a good experience. And I remember when I came down, I was like, I am never doing that again, ever.
Yeah.
And so that was like, and I didn't actually, honestly, as I say right now, I don't think I've done like Ma, which is like psilocybin and with a little bit of MEO and Aya. And I've done really light doses of psilocybin, but I've not done more than like a medium to small dose of psilocybin since then. And it's never where I'm fully tripping out. So that was a really bad experience. And so I was like, hey, I'm not doing that. Like, that was just a thing where I'm like, that's off limits, because I literally like lost my mind.
It's an important warning label to have on these experiences, what can happen.
Yeah. So fast forward to, that was 19 years later, 20 years later, I had an experience with my forum where we hired some shamans, and we did heart medicine. And you could also take psilocybin after you did the heart, and I chose not to. I just did heart. And I kind of started dabbling back in these it was a very different experience. It was very eye-opening. You and I talked about this, I think last episode of the previous one, where like I did that once or twice, and then the second time I did it, I was confronted by my hungry ghost.
Yes.
You know,
very important metaphor. Really great metaphor.
And so I had, and for those that don't know hungry ghost is like this demon in like Buddhism and I think Taoism that essentially has an insatiable appetite for greed and food or whatever, like these like hedonistic wants, you know, power, you know, like you're never satisfied.
Yeah,
and
the ghost can't even grab things or feed itself, yet it's constantly hungry and grasping.
Yeah, and I suffered from that affliction up until about 3 years ago, and even from time still, I still have relapses, but I did that, and then I had about 3 of those journeys where it was all heart, and then I finally got the courage about a year ago where I did a heart psilocybin journey, and it was beautiful, and there's a light amount of ayahuasca in that, and during that journey, what was really interesting was it was very body. So a lot of times when people who are not experienced with hallucinogens or these types of plant medicines might assume that you just like get out of your mind and you see a bunch of crazy stuff, and that's not necessarily the case. At least it hasn't been for me. Ayahuasca tends to be more body depending on how much you take. For me, it's very somatic, and so I had this, and for me, I get a lot of downloads. I get like these messages, the information gets like I get like answers to my questions that are like deep in my soul, and so I was kind of questioning like what I was doing in my business at that point, how things were going to turn out. There was a lot of ego around it. And the message I got from that psilocybin, there was not very much in the way of like visual stimulation. It was all body. So very like body, like kind of, I felt my body is the best way to say it. Kind of like how you feel your body like post massage. But my body was like talking to me, very somatic, and I got a message from grandma, which I found out later when I did Aya, where she showed me what my power was. And I felt really, really powerful. Like I felt like super powerful from that. Like I felt power, which is it's hard to explain, but if you've ever felt powerful, imagine just sitting there and that's the feeling that's coming up in your body for 3 hours straight.
Yeah.
So it was
Comes
awesome.
through you. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt really good. And then fast forward to this past February, where we sat for 2 nights and did Aya. I did that with my forum. And we did it with our TM coach. So the integration was all TM, and we did actually a
transcendental meditation.
Right. So we did transcendental meditation for our integration.
Normally those worlds don't collide. I'm interested to hear that.
I actually only took 5/8 of an ounce the whole night. I broke it into a quarter ounce. Like think of an ounce of alcohol, listeners. So a typical dose is 1 ounce. I took a quarter of an ounce. And I did that twice, and then I took an 1/8 of an ounce in my third one. So this is like a little sips. It was all downloads, man. First night was amazing, all downloads. I've never even talked about this on air. The second night, and grandma, it was like laying there and and by the way, listeners who don't know this, ayahuasca, they call her grandmother. So grandma,
say a little more about. I was going to ask about that. What does that mean to you? What's the experience of that?
She is a knowing, savvy trickster of an old lady that wants to teach you what you need to know, and she meets you where you're at, and she gives you only what you need. So like, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the feeling. If you were to like have a feeling of what it feels like to have a grandmother give that to you, that's what this feeling is. And what the shamans, our shaman was from the Shipibo tribe in Peru. That's where he was mentored. It was beautiful. The ceremony was like unbelievable. Like it was like having it was 8 of us in a yurt and a front row seat to a concert put on by the world's most amazing musicians.
Live music, beautiful.
For 6 hours, using music to like take you through a journey. I mean, like one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And you're just laying there in the dark. You don't talk, and you're just like experiencing the plant medicine. And what they say is 50% of the intelligence comes from the plant, 50% comes from you. So like, I know that might sound weird to listeners that don't know what that means, but like, imagine a spirit coming into your body and teaching you something like that. Like as much as that may or may not make sense, like that's what happens. I think.
Yeah, I often think of it as the plant really is just the fuel cell in a way that gets you out of orbit, and then that fuel cell can fall off, and then you're in the inner realm, inner space where spirit is. And some people would say, yeah, that's one of the most ontologically shocking things about these journeys. It's like, oh, God's a woman. There's a divine mother, a grandmother. It's a feminine presence, which all religious traditions have at their core anyway.
Yeah,
God before religion was this direct experience. And most times it was Shiva and Shakti, as they say in India, or the yin and the yang. There's a feminine, a mothering presence and a father presence.
Yeah, what I found for me is that with these plant medicines, I tend to feel much more comfortable with the more feminine plant medicine experiences. Yeah. For me, that seems to be the most nourishing, and like I think why psilocybin, at least in my experience, has been more masculine in my experience. And there's stuff, plant medicines, like I won't even touch. THC I won't touch like, ever. I when I was younger, like my friends would smoke weed, and I tried it, and I never ever liked it. And just whatever that spirit is doesn't work for me. Whatever that medicine
people report like Rogan and Friedman, others, they say it's the worst trips they've ever had were from THC.
Yeah, they're the worst. And so it's funny that like that's the one that's legalized, and the other ones that I think are far more like just less like more, I don't know, nurturing, comforting, educational, like spiritual for me is not that. And those are the ones that you got to like go to Costa Rica to use legally, which is a story in of itself. So, but yeah, the first night I lay there in a warm saline bath of love in grandma's arms. No crazy visuals or anything, just kind of like body. It's very, again, somatic for me. Like my body feels very good. And it was an answer to every and all questions I had in my life. It was like a stream of consciousness for 3 hours. It was amazing. It really gave me a lot of clarity around like where I need. And it was like we went through every relationship in my life, past and present. We went through every experience that I had questions on, and it was like an instant answer, and they all were grounded and made sense. And then night 2, I said Grandma's a trickster, and she was like, my intention was on what the 2 things came out of the first night was the two of the major downloads was you are power, which I had told you happened the year before, and she said something really funny. She's like, you are power, but I already told you that last time we met. And I didn't even remember that.
It has a sense of humor. It's amazing.
It was, yeah. And by the way, like I didn't even equate the previous one to an ayahuasca journey because it was really psilocybin with a little bit of ayahuasca. But I had met her there, not realizing that I had met her.
There's only one mother. Yeah.
So Grandma said, but I already told you that before, so why are you asking again? Total fucking with me.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was, she said, that came up maybe 5 dozen times in night 1, was that I am whole heart and I need to live a wholehearted life.
Beautiful.
And so the next night I said, I want you to show me what power is and what whole heart is. And so, and so it's a long story. We will take it offline, but she basically fucked with me for 2 hours and put me through the ringer to make me feel pain, to pretend like that's what it, like to show. And her answer was, you need to use your whole heart to get out of tough situations, and you need to use your power to get out of tough situations. So she put me into a tough situation where it was a lot of hallucination, uncomfort. And then I begged her to stop. And one thing about ayahuasca that's interesting is, and most people will say this, have you done ayahuasca before?
I have, yeah.
I don't know if you had this experience, but if you beg her to stop, she'll stop. Like she'll listen to you. So like I begged her I was like, it was so uncomfortable. I'm like, please stop. And it was like really intense, and it just went away like right away.
Good.
And then the rest of the experience was her basically showing me in this really interesting way through singing what my power and whole heart was. And what it was me using my voice.
Wow.
And so it was this really like it's a long story, but it was this thing. And what I had realized was I had kind of quieted myself over the last, year or so in a situation I was in, and that I needed to speak. I needed to be able to use my voice if I want to use my power. So, it was fascinating. It's fascinating. In fact, on my phone, one of my friends was like, Darius, you need to change the picture on your phone. And so I used to have a picture from my 40th birthday of me with like a snake wrapped around my arm, because my wife did this cool like photo booth with like tarantulas and snakes. And my friend's like, that's not you anymore. You need to change your picture. So I went to ChatGPT. I uploaded my notes from my Aya journey. And then it said, would you like me to create an image for that? And it creates this image of this like golden hearted like king, like with all like flying in the air.
King
like,
Darius. Yeah.
Exactly.
From history.
And that was actually one of the other things she said. She said, you are a king. Like, so which I relate to given my heritage. But yeah, man, it was profound, and it gave me a lot of clarity on how I need to, where I want to go in my next part of my journey, which I'm embarking on after this summer. So it's cool.
It sounds like you've done well to integrate that journey into your life.
Very, very well. So sorry, I know the show's about you, but
well, no, I think this one's about you. Maybe we'll do another one.
Yeah, dude, I can do 100 shows on Nathaniel, but that's been the extent of it. Like I'm a pretty big believer that plant medicine opens up consciousness, to your point, in a different way. What I was going to say earlier, though, was I get a lot of interaction with consciousness through meditation and breath work, like through TM.
Key integration tools, yes, to access that experience. Yeah,
through breath work. And so a lot of folks like who maybe think this stuff's like bad or crazy or whatever, my answer is it's a tool to interact with your consciousness in a way that gives you access that you could get there other ways, but it's a little bit quicker. It's different too, to your point. Like
we call it the nuclear option.
Yeah. And teach their own. Some people don't want to go there, and I'm like, you don't need to go there. For me, it's made my life a much more richer, fuller, and it's brought me to a place where I'm very clear on why I'm here. And imagine I was an entrepreneur who, if you had asked me 15 years ago what my goal was, it would have been. You want me to tell you what my goal would have been, Nathaniel? I want to build a $100 million company. I want to have 1,000 employees. I want to have a 9-figure to 10-figure exit. Now, all those things sound great, but if you ask me my goal now, it would not be that answer. By the way, I've built a 9-figure company with 1,000 employees.
I was going to say, you did a good part of that.
I did most of that, right? The exit wasn't necessarily that exit, but I did 2 of the 3.
But as we've said before, the materialism, the hungry ghost, is success without fulfillment, is fool's gold. It's gone already the moment you achieve it.
And it took me manifesting 3 different businesses from scratch that I thought I wanted to build, and I did. I learned a lot from each of those businesses. For me to learn that I can manifest whatever I set my mind to. That's been the learning of where I'm at right now, that I have that talent, and that the material, the hungry ghost being fed, is completely unfulfilling. And I mentor some young CEOs, and they tell me, oh, I need 10 million liquid in the bank, and I need to build XYZ. And I'm like, hey, bud, I pat them on the head. I'm like, you go do that. I remember when I was you, and they're under 30. And I'm like, but I'm going to tell you right now, you can write this on I'm going to write this on a piece of paper and seal it. And you could open it when that happens, and you will shake your head and be like, oh, you were right. And what it's going to say is, that will not change anything in your world, except it'll give you more resources to do more of whatever it is that you want to do. But your feelings internally will not change. You will still be the same person as far as what you want, unless you spiritually develop.
Yes. It's like our last episode, and you mentioned the archetype of the king. And the first covenant, and really every tradition, and why the word God has to do with surrender, is either there's a higher purpose and a higher power, or there's not. And then the ego plays God. And that's a materialistic world. The ego just struggles to survive and dominate. But when there is a higher purpose and higher power, there is a king of kings, then suddenly the king archetype actually becomes a channel to spirit and is in service to it. And that's also what's meant by what I was talking about with the guardian. When you have a purpose, a higher purpose beyond making a profit, suddenly it's like the warrior serves the king. The mercenary that's out there knocking stuff down can do it in service to a higher power, which again is the connection to spirit. And that's where meaning is generated. That's where meaning comes from.
So, what's interesting is that I interviewed a guy yesterday. Do you know Scott Donnell?
Mm-mm.
You might want to meet him. He's an interesting guy. Entrepreneur. He and I got into this deeply spiritual conversation. It went down a rabbit hole, and And he said, he's a hardcore Christian, and he's like, in the Bible, it basically says you cannot serve two masters.
God is a jealous God. You can't kind of surrender or kind of jump off the cliff or kind of serve. Jesus said serving two masters. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm not a Christian, but I'm a big God person. And he said he figured out that you either serve God, like the God, the creator. You figure out how you want to do that. Christians will do it through Jesus, his son. Muslims will do it through Islam, through Muhammad, right? Like everyone kind of picks their way. I'm just like, yeah, whoever the creator is, that's my man or woman, whatever you want to call them. Or you're serving the spirit of mammon, right?
Yeah.
And what was funny was I'm like, I haven't heard that term before, but I just pulled it up while we were talking. I'm assuming you're a very spiritually enlightened and educated guy. Like, do you want to explain? Do you know what mammon is?
Go ahead. No, I don't have that vocabulary.
So the spirit of mammon in the biblical context refers to a spirit of greed, covetousness, and focus on material wealth over spiritual matters. And he said, they used to call the Pharaoh of Egypt Mammon. And he was the god of money and power and wealth, which I was like, oh, are we talking about
power? Yeah.
I said, are we talking about the hungry ghost? Right. Yeah. That's what I got from it. And it was true. Like, you either serve because you're here to serve a higher power and here to create serve for the world, not because I want those trappings of my behavior, or I'm really serving because the ego that wants all these things.
Yeah,
right?
Serving myself, my ego.
Yeah. So it was interesting that was where he landed, and he came to the conclusion that when you serve from a place of the higher power, that everything flows and that you aren't attached to these like material outcomes. And what ends up happening, I've seen this now. What got me was I had a few friends that I know truly serve from that place. Their financial like abundance is insane. Like, these are the wealthiest people I know. And they truly
that's the notion of the likeness and image of your creator is the creator in you that you can make manifest what it is. That's the God power, that you are the dreamer. There's a quote from the Upanishads. We're like the spider. We weave our life and then we move along in it. We're like the dreamer who dreams and then lives in the dream. And this is true of the entire universe. So I think that's the kind of power that you experienced as well, that comes through you. It's a manifesting, it's a creative power, as we talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, like, when you look at the leaders you work with, like, kind of like pivoting a little bit to this idea of conscious leadership. When I thought of conscious leadership, I was introduced to a program that you were involved with called Stagen, and their motto is like doing great by doing good, right? And so it's like caring about stakeholder equity, not shareholder equity. Like, who are you affecting, and really like creating a better outcome because everyone's better off, right? That was kind of, I'm like, oh, that resonates with me. And it still does. Like, but like I actually go into a different route now, which is like, that might be tactically how I do it. And there might be some tools in which I can, like, levers I can pull and frameworks I can build in my organizations. And you should do all those things. I'm not discounting that. But I think when you see leaders, I mean, I think there's all sorts of leaders, some that are very like in touch spiritually with, being really a steward of a higher power, and their business is just a representation of value and abundance that
their
they
core
can create,
values, which help people live. It's how you do business,
right?
In service to that. Yeah.
And then there's others that maybe are less connected spiritually, but maybe care about humans, and they don't have that attachment. And then there's some that truly are like renters. They're like, how can I squeeze over here to get more wealth? They're like, their God is mammon, right? It's the hungry ghost. And I know a lot of people like that, more than I like to be surrounded by. When you see those different leaders, how have they shown up in your world as a leader yourself and a coach?
Stagen does a really good job of what we used to just call Trojan horsing, which is actually a skillful means to meet people where they're at. We need to be careful that we don't set apart the material world from the spiritual world. And then you're back to that old time religion where you're either, a monk living with a begging bowl in the monastery, or you're in the marketplace, but you're just a cutthroat capitalist and there's no meaning to anything that you do. And that's seen in terms of wanting to grow a company and sell it and get your FU money. And then you try to do philanthropy to make up for how you did business. But people are somewhere on that curve. But again, it's not wrong to want to do well for life. That's again what it means to be a guardian of something beyond, a purpose beyond making a profit. So it is what you and I have connected around with conscious capitalism that you're describing specifically. And that's who I work with. I only now, I'll do my group work, but I'm only partnering one-on-one with people who want to play the long game, who are exited founders or second-time founders, or who are somewhere on this path. From early on, they went to Burning Man, or they had their first psychedelic journey, to even very spiritually advanced people who are up in the monastery because they've sold their company, but they're not yet sure, how do I reintegrate this back into the way that I live my life? And to some extent, there are two pathways. You bring it back to your partner at work, and you get super clear and aligned about what you want to build, the kind of culture you want. And then you get your team into that. And it's a core value process, like you might lead people through. But we've talked about this in other episodes, there's a disruption that happens when you as the CEO are willing to have the feedback flow up, and that you get disrupted first, because you're not the dictator. There is freedom of speech, and you are serving a higher purpose and a higher power. You're willing to get checked and balanced. That alone would go quite a long way in the world today. And then that trickles down into the organization, because, circles within circles. Every team on the organization is high performing in that way, because there's that level of trust that creates the next level of coherence. But the whole other thing, which we joke about with 360 feedback, it's like, try 720 feedback. Like, you think you're so enlightened, Ram Dass says, try visiting your family for the weekend, or your parents. But it's the same thing. Like, go to your wife. That's 720 feedback. Are you really in sacred union, sacred partnership at home? Like, that's what the crucible of a marriage was really meant to be. The tension can actually grow you on this path of awakening. And then what about your family? I remember our friend who just passed away recently, Rick Sapio, and bless his heart, like, we led an ILP together and invited me over to his home for dinner. And there on the placemats around the table with his young children at the time were their family core values and the trips they were taking for the year together. So to bring it to integrate what we think of as otherworldly and spiritual into life. That's what the purpose of it was to begin with. I had I'm not such a fan of Orthodox religion, but I did have a Passover one year, Passover Seder with an Orthodox family and with a rabbi. And it was a lot of fundamentalism. I had to kind of close my ears. But at a certain point, the rabbi said, we don't have monks in Judaism. I'm like, what? The record scratched. I'm like, well, hold on a minute. I've never thought about that. And I'm however old now. And I said, well, okay, Rabbi, why do we not have monks in Judaism? He said, well, if on the one hand, you're like an animal, greedy, gorging yourself on things without restraint, then you're no better than an animal. But if you just move up to the monastery and you live without material life, then why would God have created it if not to enjoy? So in my mind, I'm like, this guy's talking about Buddhism. This is the middle way between the spiritual and the material.
Yeah.
It's not if, and then he says the second thing. It's not if we consume something. We say a blessing over every material act, and that makes it sacred. And I'm like, wow, that's mindfulness. It's not if you consume something, it's how. So I think that was always the original intention of what is meant by, having the feminine and the masculine more in balance, the spiritual and the material. It's this very food that we're being given, the breath coming in and out. Plant medicine will show you that. It's showing you how to metabolize life. Like this very moment, this friendship, this conversation. And so that's the direction with leaders now that I'm wanting to take. There's this archetype of the guardian. And last thing to say would be, if you remember, Brian Schultz from Studio Movie Grill, he introduced me to this clip, which was probably current at the time, of the iPad Air commercial with Robin Williams. So for your listeners, if you haven't watched that in 10 years, like, go watch it, because it's a secret weapon to the coaches out there to have a conversation about meaning. And it's him from Dead Poet Society. And he says, basically, math, engineering, law, these are noble pursuits necessary for the sustaining of human life. But beauty, poetry, love, romance, these are what we stay alive for. So the meaning itself is the feminine. It's like, what are you alive for? What do you protect? A guardian is a protector. What do you protect that is most sacred to you? It's like, find out what you would die for and then live for it. And we need that in the world today. And that's what the Guardian men's work, after ALP, Awakening Leadership Program with plant medicine, we invite people into a forum structure or a Guardian men's circle structure. And it's like step by step, no one has to go to the next step, but that ends up being the membership structure of our spiritual community around plant medicine. And it's so interesting because the sponsors of our programs literally are inviting people into their homes for these experiences. So there is that, if you remember Brian Murarescu's work, early Christian church was domestic. It was around the dinner table. And no wonder, because the Jews that were mostly converting to Christianity when the temple fell in like 70 AD, that also was a democratizing move to where each Jewish head of the household would lead ritual and ceremony around the dinner table on Friday nights for the Sabbath. So there's this feeling of like, oh yeah, it's in life. It's what if your closest friends, what if your forum mates always were your band of brothers, always were the best therapy you could get. They always were your fellowship, your fellow travelers, your spiritual community. So it's just bringing a really human way of relating to one another that we're trying to invite people into. And that, as we say, journey of a lifetime. Who do you want to spend it with?
I love that, man. Let me ask you a question, because this is something that's kind of came up for me. It's an observation, because I think that there's like the law of diffusion of technology, right? Where it's like early adopters, and then like early majority, late majority, laggards, right? And I feel like we're in the early majority of this like conscious capitalist movement. I don't think it's early adopters anymore. I think it's early majority. And the reason I say that is I'm noticing folks, and like we were kind of talking about this before the show started, red, orange, and blue using conscious capitalist language.
Yeah.
I also think there's a movement, there's also an inverse movement of like hardcore red that's like, worldwide right now, populist, especially with the leadership in the United States and some abroad where they're pushing back on the green. But putting that aside, I think I'm finding
a whole podcast on that for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to do another hour. Like, I'm just going to book 2 hours for us next time. Cause
let's do a long form. Let's go deep.
Yeah, dude, we're barely even getting started. Listeners, I'll book 3 hours with Nathanael, because seriously, we could seriously do that. We'll do 2 hours next time. But I'd like to. I got 5 minutes left. Unfortunately, I'll make this part 1, and part 2 will be a 2-hour show. What I'm seeing is that corporate America is starting to fake it. They're like using conscious capitalist language, but managing
it's greenwashing. It's a lateral move, not a vertical move.
Totally, right. And so I wanted to like, I've seen it, and I'll see them say the right things. Like, we have core values and they're XYZ, and I'm like, your behavior does not align to that. And they'll like double and triple down on it. Double, triple. I'm saying, to your point, greenwashing. And I'm sitting there and I'm like just scratching my head, and I'm like, yeah, like, I get it, man, but like that, like, this is not the early 2000s or 90s anymore. Like, that's not how people want to be led at all. And so I'm curious if because of the popularity of conscious capitalism and this like enlightenment, this real awakening that's happening, are you seeing this yourself, where people are like saying, yeah, I'm interested, but then you're fighting their urge to lead in a less conscious way?
As I've joked, the greatest obstacle to conscious leadership is your own unconscious leadership. and even with the people who do actually want to adopt it, they have the best of intentions. And when it comes to doing the work and getting triggered and giving up power, like empowering your team to say what they're thinking and feeling, but not saying, tension comes from the world of self-organization, which means rather than command and control and stuff flows downstream, you want to sense and respond. You want to stop the line when there's a mistake at Toyota and celebrate, because the organization is a mirror for the guy who's leading it or the gal who's leading it. So to really actually have your organization be the greatest source of your own personal awakening, like, the founder of Whole Foods, John Mackey, said, every time I had a breakthrough, my organization had a breakthrough. And when I was ready to have another breakthrough, Whole Foods would show me because of what I was complaining about in Whole Foods. And that kind of relationship where it's self-transforming, where you realize disruptions are there to disrupt you so that you can unlock yourself. Yeah, that checking and balancing of the ego. What did we just talk about? Wrestling with God. The ego does not want to submit.
No.
And so it takes the person with the power to set up the checks so that, and that's what a guardian means as a coach. It's the principle of conscience. So I'm not the hero archetype personally. I would say you are. And I have been the mentor coach who's the guardian, the Merlin to the King Arthur, who's curating the roundtable power dynamics. Or the Gandalf who's like, makes sure that no one person grabs the ring of power. There's a fellowship around the ring bearer. And you can't trust yourself to carry it by yourself. Ray Dalio is a great example of that too. Deliberately set up a meritocracy, an idea meritocracy, and deliberately set up a board above him to check and balance his ideas. So, examples of this kind of leadership are out there. And there's a kind of crisis in masculinity, what's being mistaken for masculinity. That is merely an acting tough when it's really a pretty gross overcompensation for insecurity. That's an old kind of bravado, that kind of masculinity. And as we know from martial arts like judo and jujitsu, it means gentle way or gentle art. And technique, good technique always overcomes brute force.
Yeah.
And that's what the martial arts were always there to teach traditionally. And we seem to have forgotten that lesson. Like, how many times does an ego need to get tapped out before it learns to soften and surrender a little bit? So thank God we have those pathways of development. And that is part of my guardian training now too.
Yeah.
Like, we have the 4 archetypes: the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And, to bring the warrior training in as appropriate physically on the mat, to start to show people how they're showing up on the mat and how the force that they're used to using actually doesn't work. And, the whole other half of it is the rest of us need empowerment. We don't like to push people over. We tend to be the pushover. All of that shows up on the mat too. And it's a way to start to work with what true, calm, confident leadership presence is all about. But it takes embodying it through practice, the 10,000 hour principle.
Yeah, man. Nathanael, let's do this. If we're unfortunately at time here, and I have a hard stop. People that want to connect with you, how can they connect with you? And then we're just going to schedule, like, when we get off here, like 2 hours, like for next week if you're around, or the week after. And then
I'm around. I'm a new dad, so I'm pretty light.
Awesome. I love that. For people that want to connect with you, we'll put this in the show notes. What's the best way they can connect to learn more about your programs?
Right now, let's go for awakeningleadership.org. And I'm also Nathanael.Chawkin on Instagram. And LinkedIn, you can find me there too.
Awesome. Guys, check out Nathanael. I'm going to book another 2 hours with him. We'll make this a part 1 and part 2. Until next time, peace out, everybody. Love you. She's my lover. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on, so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers, and after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one. She's my lover.